Hey guys, it's Standing for Truth coming to you tonight. I've got some good people here. I got Neph, Raw Matt, Snake was right. This is Sunday Night Showdown: Creation versus Evolution. We're gonna talk the evidence. This can also be considered, a bit of an after show for the Snake was right versus Kent Hovind debate. Very fun, very engaging. Hopefully, anybody interested can go and watch that if they haven't. Why don't we get right into it then? Taylor, you talked a lot about the fossils and transitional forms, for example. I know you brought up Archaeopteryx there, but at the end of the day, it seems like the rule of thumb is the fact that the gaps in the fossil record are huge, and there's just so many examples. I think Hovind brought up a few of them during the question and answer, but there's so many examples of different organisms appearing abruptly and fully formed in the fossil record. A couple examples: the first bats, pterosaurs, and birds, right, where I'm sure you're aware of the fact that they were fully fledged flyers. And even turtles, right? We see turtles were well designed in a specialized group of reptiles. So I know Raw Matt has been doing some research on that too. And sure, there's a select few mosaics, right? I mean, just look at the platypus, look at the penguin, look at Tiktaalik, even Archaeopteryx, But the thing is, according to our model too, we would predict some form of mosaics, because even some products of human design span two categories. I think we can all agree that boats and tanks, they would fall into entirely different classes, but then we see vehicles that blend the features of these very different means of transportation. So, amphibious assault vehicles, for example, that would be, what you would consider a transitional form, but we just consider that a mosaic. And why we say we predict mosaics is because we see a select few examples that you can look to as an evolutionist that you'll say it's transitional form, but you would need to see millions of these so-called transitional forms. So to me, it looks like there's a lot of cherry picking going on. Go ahead, Taylor, take your time.
So unless you're going for like a God of the gaps argument, I don't really see why we're focusing on the gaps, and that's ignoring all the hits and just focusing on the misses. But the gaps are not really that large. What we're focusing on is like filling in like tiny little transitions. But what I focus on is the methodology. So I'm not sure how you guys are saying that you can predict mosaic features. I don't know what you're basing that on, but you can't. I'm not aware of any way you can test your model. We can test our model, and it's proved fairly accurate. Just like if someone hands you a hand-drawn map and it looks hand-drawn and kind of crappy, but as long as the right roads are in the right place and it gets you to where you want to go,
well,
then it's at least that accurate.
Taylor, part of the problem is that the model is constantly evolving. They update it every time a new discovery refutes something the evolutionists have been saying for nearly 100 years. Then they just change the theory, so the theory is never wrong.
And theory stays the same. The phylogeny changes slightly.
No, because bird evolution is an example. For 100 years, evolutionists said birds didn't evolve until after dinosaurs went large. The only dinosaurs left after mass extinctions were little ones, the chicken-sized guys, and those are the ones that evolved into birds. That's what they've been telling the world for 100 years. But the fossil evidence has overthrown that idea, and so now they're claiming that modern types of birds coexisted in the late Cretaceous with creatures with large theropod dinosaurs. And so how do they fix the problem? Well, the theory changes. That's all. What they tell you, the model changes, and then they just go right on as though it never was wrong to begin with. And that's what they do. Evolutionists do this endlessly.
Well, it's because evolutionists assume that, you know, universal common ancestry is true. So any evidence that's contradictory to the you know, to the main story, they will just force fit into it somehow, whether it's through a rescue device or whether it's
why would we do that?
Actually, Taylor, before we continue the conversation, is there anything you can do with your sound? It sounds like there's a bit of an echo, and you're kind of low to hear as well. But usually you sound great. So maybe if you could just do something to fix that. And I wanted to address one thing you said too before you know, you go ahead. Like you were saying, you know, why would we predict you know, mosaics? Why would we expect what we see in the fossil record to fit our model? It's because we look to the Bible, obviously, as our starting point. And if we as humans are made in God's image, then I'm almost done. I just want to let you know why we have that starting point, because that way we can get a sense for what kind of design patterns God might have used by, you know, then studying and examining the patterns that result from human design. So of course, if we see things like crossover SUVs, you know, the Ford Flex, the Dodge Journey, for example, you know, they resist classification. There's your mosaic. And then we can see you know, sedans, trucks, vans. Obviously, it all fits a nested hierarchy. So we predict the exact same thing. But the thing is, you guys have the problem of you know, what's not unique, and then all of a sudden you invoke, say, convergent evolution or whatever it is. So obviously there's competing explanations, but then there's so much data that contradicts your interpretation. So you're going to cherry pick some of the data, and then you're going to ignore the huge gaps, because there are massive gaps. It's not just one here, one there. I mean, they're everywhere.
What are the biggest gaps?
Where is it?
I don't see any real substantial gaps. I went over the whole thing last night.
There is nothing but gaps. What are you talking about?
Yeah, give me a specific one.
All of them.
Yeah, so give me a specific one, Sarah Palin.
Everyone.
Sarah Palin, this is not 2006 or whatever. Just give me one.
Yeah. The transition from fish to land, the transition from small theropod dinosaur to bird, the transition from non-insect to insect, the transition from ape to man. Every one of them, Taylor. Every one.
Yeah, you named several that are some of the best with very few gaps, and there are almost no gaps in any that you mentioned.
Oh.
We see a straight transition from arthropod to insect, straight transition from dinosaur to bird. We're constantly adding new links in the human evolution. There's like 23 of them. It's very fluid.
Well, the big problem is the fact that we're seeing so many different organisms appearing so quickly, right? Abruptly and fully formed in the fossil record. I used a few examples right at the beginning. You know, the bats, pterosaurs, birds, they were all fully fledged. They were all exactly the way they look. We see stasis. We see stasis everywhere. I mean, we see turtles. We see these insects, you know, in amber that supposedly the evolution is millions and millions of years old, yet they look exactly. Actually, most of them were more superior back in the fossil record. I mean, Matt was just talking about how the turtles were bigger, were more superior. Isn't that right, Matt?
Yeah, the turtles had the ability. They had teeth in their mouth. They had the ability. They had long tails, so they could swim faster. They could dig into the ground. They were actually speed. They were just like the bat. You know, the original bat was far superior. He could dig in the ground. He could eat fruit. He could eat insects. He could eat animals. He could climb trees. He could fly, burrow under the ground. I mean,
how do you know they were turtles?
Because they had the exact same underbelly structure based on them. See, they have a lot of problems with turtles.
Exactly. We look at the comparative anatomy. The anatomical features are how we know things are related.
Yeah, they try. But anyway, that's what they've been trying to do. That's what
you do.
That's what created.
You just did it. Kent did it in the debate. I said, what is the definition of a kind? That which brings forth. I proved that wrong, and so he fell back on, they're all salamanders because they all look like salamanders. So he's using
we can get to a point where, you know, there's not going to be, for example, with the rabbits, right? Ring species, everything. I mean, you can't infer that in any path. We can see the limits of what a kind is, but that's not going to prove that a pine tree and a whale are.
So how does your model How does your model distinguish between a rabbit that differentiated and a rabbit that was created separately, kind of rabbit, that were two different kinds of rabbits created? How do you know the difference?
They're two different kinds of rabbit. They're two kinds.
Created separately versus two different species that differentiated through
Are
breeding.
you asking if
What?
So
Are
are
you
the
saying
two different rabbit species that cannot bring forth? They cannot breed. Therefore, by the simpler definition, it's not the same kind. But you say they're both rabbits, so they're both the same kind. So were they both
of course
descended from the same rabbit, or are they differently created rabbit kinds?
No, they would have been able to originally bring forth, and now through whatever environmental means, environmental pressures, they have become too far from the norm, and due to, just like you see in ring species, I mean, now that's probably heading towards your limit of the kind, and a lot of times when you go from, say, a wolf to a chihuahua, I mean, it's the degeneration of information anyways. I mean, there's no uphill change. There's no fish to fisherman evolution being seen. So I mean, if these are your strongest examples to demonstrate that type of large scale evolution, I mean, it seems pretty weak to me, at least.
It's not demonstrating
Taylor, let me address your claim about the insect fossil record. You said we have a very complete fossil record of the evolution of insects. That's not true, as I said. A.E. Hutchins stated in the book Insects, page 33 and 4, 19.
I don't care.
Taylor, please let me finish. Insect origins beyond that point, the Carboniferous, are shrouded in mystery. It might seem as though insects had suddenly appeared on the scene, but this is not in agreement with accepted evolutionary ideals of animal origins. And in 1997, the Encyclopedia Britannica states the insect fossil record has many gaps. Insect fossil record, Britannica, version 97. 1997. So, according to the information gathered from the scientific community by Encyclopedia Britannica in just 20 years ago, the evolution of insects is not that game. You're not going to do that, really. So
yeah, we've discovered more discoveries since then. 20 years ago.
No, you have
your science is outdated. Next.
No, that's not true.
Moving on.
So the point I was making is that by 1997 they had recovered hundreds and thousands and thousands and thousands of insect fossils in the fossil record. Perhaps, please, Taylor, you can respond.
I haven't had a chance to talk in a long time.
Perhaps tens of thousands of fossils of insects had been recovered by, say, 1960 or 70, and they don't have these transitional forms. They still don't have them. If you claim that they do, and that's just not true.
Yep, we've discovered many since 20 years ago.
None.
Your science is outdated.
No transitional forms for insects have been discovered.
Yep, tons of them.
Okay, show us.
The first insect that discovered wings. It has transitional wings.
Transitional? What do you mean by a transitional wing?
It's gill forms that were from arthropods turn into membranous webs, and those turn into wings.
So there's a fossils that show that gills turned into wings.
Yep, and it's a pretty smooth gap, or not a pretty smooth transition with very little gaps. There's a couple of small gaps here and there.
No, that's complete nonsense.
No, you read it yourself. It said there.
No, absolutely, you're wrong. You might believe it.
No, quit
it's
interrupting me right now.
Oh.
Yeah.
You can interrupt me though, right?
Yeah, if you've been talking for 5 minutes and I know your point and I haven't spoken in 5 minutes. So you read it yourself. It didn't say there were large gaps. And you read from outdated science. So
no, I'm sorry, Taylor, but they haven't discovered, all these transitional forms in the last 20 years. You might believe that, but that's just not true. And on top of that,
no, it's true. I'm not going to let you lie.
The Encyclopedia Britannica says insect fossils has many gaps. Many.
Yeah, small gaps. Yep. Small
And
gaps.
the truth
Many
is,
small gaps. Learn it.
many,
Learn it. Get it through your skull.
Many means that the transitional form to transition from non-insect to insect is completely all broken up. Many. It doesn't mean 5. It means many. Okay, so you're doing what evolutionists often do is you misrepresent the information.
No,
Many
you're
somehow
misrepresenting
becomes
the
3 or
information.
4. And it's not 3 or 4. It's like, I don't know, 100, you know?
Quit
50?
misrepresenting.
Not misrepresenting.
Yes, you are.
They don't have
You're
10.
deliberately misrepresenting the scientific consensus.
They don't
We
have
all agree.
They don't have 10 fossils that show it, much less 3.
We
or
have hundreds
30.
of thousands of fossils.
They don't have any
We
fossils.
show you 10, you want 11. We show you 11, you want 12.
Show me 10.
You only know how to move the goalposts. So this is what you can assume your Bible too. We can assume our thing. Who cares?
I don't need to assume.
No, that's how it works.
No, I just pointed out that an expert source states that just 20 years ago said the fossil record for insects has many gaps. And if you want to believe that...
And we filled those gaps in a 20-year period.
Taylor, you know, when
I'm not moving forward until you're able to learn new information.
Taylor, you know, when I discuss...
Is it 20 years after this?
Taylor, you know, when I discuss evolution with people about fossil records and the transition from this to that and this to that and this to that, you know what evolutionists always say? Always say, well, that's outdated source because that was back in 2005.
Right,
and
science progresses.
As though the paleontologists and geologists, anthropologists have all discovered all the transitional forms in the last 4 years.
I didn't say that. Straw man, you're misrepresenting again.
No, I'm not. I'm making an example.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Try again.
That is the way evolutionists always treat statements from their own camp about the fossil.
No, that is a lie.
No, that's a fact.
No, it's not. No one claims that we've discovered all the transitions. Quit lying.
That's the way they come across that, Taylor.
Okay, well,
you just did it yourself. You just said in the last 20 years they've discovered boogles of fossils that show the evolution of the insects from non-insects. That's not true.
No, I said we've discovered things since 20 years ago.
You said numerous. There's many fossils that show it.
And?
So this is I'm just pointing out that when you discuss transitions with evolutionists, it's always magically just so that whatever source you provide, whether it's 1998, 1988, 2008, or 2011, the answer is always they've found them since then. This is what we always get.
Yeah, because you use outdated stuff.
Which means that all the fossils that show evolution have been found since 2000, right?
No.
Or 1990? 85? What year? When did they start finding?
I'm sure I can cite for you a time period where we didn't know what the sun was. Guess what? We figure stuff out. That's how science works. You can't add information because you're locked into your Bible. So we have this. This is what I'm focusing on. You get lost in the gaps, and meanwhile, real scientists are focusing on methodology. So let me finish. So you can assume your Bible, and we can assume evolution. Where does that get us?
Now you said there were many.
Can I finish? Can I finish? Where does that get us? It doesn't get us anywhere because we're both just sitting there saying, "Well, I think it's this way. Well, I think it's that way," and we can argue all day long until we test our hypotheses. So, can you put your hypothesis to the test? Have you ever observed special creation, and can you put that hypothesis to the test? I'm very curious.
Well, we are not assuming anything, but you said there were many fossils that show the evolution of insects, and you cited one that you think is. Where are these many? Or did you misrepresent the information? Do evolutionists have one they think they can show you and say, look, this is where it happened? Or do they really have the many, as you implied?
There are hundreds of thousands of these fossils, and lots of bugs are transitions toward each other.
They show, by examining the fossils themselves, that they are transitional one to another.
So what I focused on in the debate with Kent was how do we find out whether organisms are related? And what methodology do we use to fact check that?
I'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you're doing these, gene sequencing and using molecular phylogenetics to determine what's related and what shares,
Or not.
I mean, you're inferring it. Okay, so how are you determining, like, for example, what's your best evidence to show that pineapples and whales are related through common ancestry? What are you looking at? You're looking at, mitochondrial DNA differences, nuclear DNA differences. Are you sequencing the genes? Like, what are you doing?
It's not one data point. It's like I showed Kent. It's at least 5 premises.
Okay, name 2.
2 premises.
Sure.
We observe change in real time, and we observe differences between the fossil layers.
Okay, so
the
we
question
observe,
is, what is why are there those differences there?
well, we see change. Obviously, no one disagrees with a change in allele frequency in populations over time, but that's not going to
So how many
by any means that, because nobody disagrees with that. Natural selection is a selection process.
Right.
A fine-tuning process doesn't create anything. So, okay. Then you're looking at the fossil record. Okay, well, if you don't have a mechanism that actually can build a genome, that can actually add new information to the genome, you're not going to be able to go to from single cell, multi-cell, fish, amphibian, reptile, mammal, bird, monkey, man. Those types of changes take massive increases in novel information. So you can look to the fossil record, but that's circular, because you need an actual theory to account for your interpretation of the fossil record. So let's ignore those 2 premises, and why don't you show us how you're going to build a genome?
Why would we ignore those premises? That's how we first confirmed.
Because we agree with change. But the thing is, for one, does the change have limits? And is the change in allele frequency that we see the type of change that's going to, take your fish to fishermen? Is that going to prove that pine trees and whales are related through common ancestry?
So you accept those premises. Another premise was that the populations, it's about the pattern in the rock layers. So the populations trend toward modern life and trend toward more diversity. So we see more branching, more diversity within kind, you could say, towards the younger layers. Do you agree with that?
I agree. We see diversity. I agree. We see diversity in the fossil record. We see diversity today, but we see stasis for the most part.
Like
fossil record.
Like once we see the first turtle, then we see in the next fossil layer lots of different kinds of turtles.
We see fully formed turtles in the fossil record, and we see
half-formed turtles
today.
We see lizards that have like fused ribs that have a beak like a turtle, and then they have the exact same skeleton as basically one of the first turtles. Its ribs have been fused like a turtle, and it looks exactly like a sea turtle, except for a couple of small features. I think its tail is a little longer.
See, the problem is if one is bound like yourself to the to this evolutionary paradigm, then obviously you're going to be compelled to interpret those bones in the dirt, according to your main premise that whales and pine trees are related through common ancestry. But the thing is, without a mechanism, without a way to for example, add the new information to the genome to actually build new structures and new novelties. I mean, like I said, it's just circular because you don't even have a theory to cling to. So like before you go through some bones found in the dirt, and the thing is, a lot of it is selective treatment, a lot of it is cherry picking.
But why would we do that?
Because
why would we do such terrible science?
You can't cite circumstantial evidence of these fossils without an actual theory to cling to. I mean, you're going to have to show us what type of mechanism is going to be able to account for that, because we know natural selection and mutations are not going to be building anything new and novel. So I don't know why you're using it.
It's not the natural selection. The selection selects through the things that are already there, and the mutations create new things. So how big of an allele difference constitutes a difference of a kind?
Well, what type of mutation is actually gonna, like, for example, what type of, say, beneficial mutation, quote unquote, can you provide us that, you know, increases the net information in the genome? Because all we see is adaptive degeneration. We see.
Why does it have to increase the net
And
information?
none of this is going to account for the life we see, the novelty we see. What was that?
Why does it need to add information?
If you're going to go from a single-celled organism to a multi-cell to a fish to amphibian, there's new traits, new features, new structures, new novelties that are going to have to come about. I mean, we see through artificial selection a variety of dogs through natural selection and selective treatment of traits. But I mean, at the end of the day, all you're getting is a variety of dog. But you want to tell us that a dog and a fish are related? Well, I mean, how is that going to come about? Like, what type of mechanism are you just looking to mutations? Are you looking to you know, gene duplications? What type of mechanism is going to do that?
So if I have the word door, D-O-O-R, and I change the R to an M, and now I have the word doom, is that new information?
So are you using that as an example of, say, a point mutation?
I'm just trying to understand what you think is new information.
No, that wouldn't be new novel information. That would be
acting
upon
it's a new word.
The existing information. You can reshuffle the genes in a dog gene pool all you want, but all you're going to get is a variety of dog. You're never going to get anything.
Well, we're just looking at the gene level. So if you have a new word or a new combination of letters, how is that not new information? What would be new information? A new set of base pairs that we've never seen before? You there?
Oh, just one second. Yeah, honey. Okay. Ask that again.
What would constitute new information at a gene level? Because you don't accept a new word or a new combination of the base pairs. So what would be new information? What's the goalpost here?
The goalpost is the fact that when the changes we see is a shuffling of the pre-existing information. So whether you're looking to a point mutation, inversion mutation, gene duplication, whatever it is, all you're going to get is a variety of whatever's in that gene pool. I mean, there's nothing new, there's nothing novel, there's nothing. Are you saying just through recombination?
No, I'm asking you, what would you consider new information? What would it look like so that I know how to meet your criteria?
So if you're looking at, let's take a point mutation, for example. For me, I would be looking to an explanation of net gain versus net loss. And no matter what mutation you can point me to, it's all degenerate in some way. And I don't understand how you're going to get take your fish to fisherman by consistent loss in genetic variability. If the whole genome is degenerating and you're throwing out all this information and you're trying to make up for it with a few beneficial mutations, and you can see in bacterial populations, you can see that they adapt through loss of genes, and you can actually see a shrinking genome size. You can actually see that when you sequence the genes, and I think Lensky,
they also share genes, so they can literally spit genes out at each other.
You talking about horizontal gene transfer?
Yeah. So right. I mean, that's how unicellular things do it. They can literally just get a new gene. So would you consider that, or let's just say there's a creature sitting there and magically a new gene just pops up in its gene code? Is that new information? A beneficial gene. Let's just assume for the argument what would be considered new information to you, new genetic information?
Well, for example, if you look at, the experiments being done on these E. coli bacteria that Lenski has been it's the largest evolutionary experiment to date, and thousands and thousands and thousands of generations have been looked at in these single-celled organisms, and all we've seen is degenerative adaptation. So if you want to see large-scale evolution in real time, all we're seeing is bacteria producing more bacteria. So if science is about observations, and we see a shrinking functional genome size, and we're seeing that these bacteria are getting rid of genes short-term, but it's long-term degeneration. I mean, you would have to show a net increase in the actual functional genome. You're going to have to show evidence of a gene. If you have, say, an amoeba, some single-celled organism, I mean, there's a lot of new traits that would have to come about to indirectly take your single-celled organism to, say, a whale or an elephant or a human being. I mean, obviously, they don't have the specific information to build something like a whale would have. I don't know.
So if there's a new gene that hadn't ever been in the population before that occurs in one of the new generations, is that new information?
A new gene that wasn't in the, let's take a bacterial population, for example. Are you saying, has there been observed a new gene that can take things forward? Do we see things being taken forward in any meaningful way?
So it has to be new information and pushing the population in a direction towards another type of population.
Right. Well, obviously, evolution, it doesn't take place on an individual level. It takes place on a population level. So, yeah, you'd have to see that population being taken forward in a meaningful way. I mean, everything we see is decay of prior information. We see a variety.
But so we're never going to observe a bacteria change into a pineapple. It's going to be another bacteria.
Right. Yeah.
Or a population of bacteria, and then a population a colony of bacteria, then a colony with a specific way of organizing themselves, and the complexity builds rapidly from there. But it's never one step becomes another type of organism. It's always it's like a color gradient. There's a hazy area in between that includes both extremes on both sides. Even though, red and blue are not, you can never breed them, but you have this purple in between, which can breed with both sides.
I understand the law of monophily, right? A eukaryote will never stop being a eukaryote. We see dogs produce dogs. We're not going to expect a dog to produce a non-dog, but you're the one who believes that a population of dogs today came from something that was non-dog long ago and far away. But all we see is producing dogs. We see bacteria producing bacteria, but you're here today to try and demonstrate your belief that dogs and bacteria are actually related through common ancestry. So you need to demonstrate to us how in provable science things are actually being taken forward. Because I understand you're saying we wouldn't expect bacteria to produce something that was non-bacteria. But if you started off billions of years ago and the earth was ruled by single-celled organisms and that's all you had, and now billions of years later you got all this life, mammals, reptiles.
But so
how do you account for all of that? I mean, if let me ask you this: if you agree that bacteria just produce more bacteria, and at one point I imagine that you believe the Earth was ruled by single-celled organisms, whether it was amoeba, bacteria, or whatever, how come it just didn't stay that way?
Okay, so a unicellular algae is not going to give birth to a kelp, but it's going to give birth to an algae that gives birth to an algae that gives birth to an algae that gives birth to an algae that can give birth to a kelp. So, sorry, what was your last question?
My question was, we seem to agree on the law of monophyly, okay? Populations of dogs are going to produce more dogs. Bacteria are going to produce more bacteria. That's what we see. And what we see is degenerative changes, adaptive degenerative changes. Of course, natural selection is a fine-tuning mechanism. It keeps the species as strong as it can be. But so we seem to agree on that. But the thing is, you're the one that's asserting that, you know, single-celled organisms and dogs are actually related through common ancestry. But would you say at one point all we had on this earth were single-celled amoeba or whatever it was billions of years ago after, you know, let's step away from abiogenesis, but your first life, what was that? Was that a single-celled organism of some kind?
Yeah, most likely. And then, so would you agree that a colony of these single-celled organisms that can't survive individually, that depend on one another to form a specific shape and are anchored to the ground, would you say that's a different type of organism than the single-celled version, which can move around? Because that happens with the stentor single cell.
That is not a multi-celled organism. That's a colony.
Well, but where's the line? It's a step towards multicellularity.
Just like a group of people, as Holden told you.
Are they the same kind, though?
Are they the same kind? A colony of single-celled organisms?
That produce only other colonies, and that can only survive as colonies. They don't produce single cells. Is that a different kind from the single-celled cousin that it has?
Let's see what Matt thinks about that. I don't want to take up this whole conversation. Do you think that's the same kind, Matt? Go ahead, brother.
Look up stentor colony.
I would have to presume that it would probably be different because it's a symbiotic organism and they can't exist without one another. So I would imagine that it would be a separate kind, kind of like a bee with a flower. Different things. They need each other symbiotically, and you remove one and you have another problem with the other.
So, but it's only one step from the single cell to that dependent colony, because they can stick to each other and they can communicate. It's just that their communication is now genetically encoded. So now the multicellular or the single cellular ones that gave birth to one that was stuck to other ones, maybe you could view that as a birth defect. But if they survive better, then it's not a birth defect.
True, but would these branch out into being what he was trying to say, I guess, is convert that to being like, how far will they mutate into, like, will this bacteria mutate from this bacteria into, you know, another form of bacteria that now can eventually become everything that we see today? And
now that we've taken the step A, then all these different steps open up. Because we're this far along, so now the steps that we couldn't take before are now available to us. So this colony can now start to differentiate its cell functions.
So these original colony of bacteria then would have to have something like 19,000 genes, for example, since that's how many human beings have. And since they don't have that many, these would have had to come about at some way, shape, or form. And we don't see these new genes just popping up from something that doesn't have these genes in real time.
We could be looking at a bunch of created kinds that are still evolving into new different kinds. It's just like, well, maybe there was an original fish that became sharks and amphibians, and maybe there was an original cell that became like a bunch of sea sponges or something.
Right, yeah, like a bush of life. That's what we read. We see it like a bush of life, not just one thing morphing, because we have a big problem when it comes to I would have to say myself anyway, that I would have a big problem with trying to rationalize why a human being would de-evolve every beneficial physiological adaptation that primates have, like muscle tissue being stronger, a powerful jaw, teeth that don't crack, high immune system function where they can never get AIDS or HIV that actually affect them in any way, better methylation, far better vision, and can see more colors, never need glasses, never get sun damage. I can go down the list. We've lost every single one of those, every beneficial adaptation in what, 125,000 years since the branching off of a common ancestor. I don't know. It just doesn't really hold up on why we would do this.
Well, animals that live in caves lose their sight and their pigmentation.
Yeah, but they enhance in other ways. We haven't really enhanced in anything except for our brain.
Yeah, and we don't need anything else. Pretty much, we can make claws, we can make wings, we can make teeth, or spears.
We lost our fur. Now we have to put fur on. We lost.
Yeah, we can make it. It's much better. We can take it off and put it on, and put on different kinds.
But the animals don't have a problem with their fur at all. They can live in multiple regions of the world and don't require a jacket at all. I mean, yeah.
But they overheat a lot faster than we do.
They live mostly in the tropics. I would imagine they wouldn't have been there if they were overheating. India's real hot. Tropics real hot. They do really good in tropics, but they don't get skin cancer. They can hang out directly in the sun. We have to cover ourselves or else we get skin cancer. That's very flawed. Horrible. They have way better methylation. They can never get cancer or AIDS or any of these things. They have far better hearing, far better bone density, far better movement with the two bones in their legs and forearms. They have no such thing as outdoor allergies. We have allergies all over the place. It's just horrible. When we compare ourselves to the digestion, the power, the physical immunity, basically we have failed. The only thing we have is our brain. And now, look around. A lot of people don't even have a very good one of those.
But the reason that we see trade-offs is because we're using the same genome of an existing creature and then changing that.
Wait. You sound really echoey. I'm afraid people won't hear you good.
Okay. Is this any better?
Yeah, that's better. Okay, go ahead.
I kind of forgot what I just said. Something.
Go to the live one and rewind. Go back 30 seconds. Maybe your train of thought will come back.
Taylor, I want to address your.
I got it back. The reason that we see these the differentiation of traits is because we're working with the genome that we're changing. And so we're going to see the trade-off of traits because we have the set of traits that works, and we're changing one that has this one benefit. But then since we're messing with stuff that already does something, then we're going to get a trade-off because you could change something and it like you can do this to your car. Like maybe, I don't know, a simplistic way of looking at it, you can up the performance of the car, drive it more aggressively, but this is going to put more damage on your car.
Right, but everything, I mean, you would have to, like, everything is physiologically different. That's what I was
between humans and apes.
Yeah, like we can look at bone structure and the density. We can look at the teeth. We can look at the power of the muscle tissue, the power of the jaw, the fur that they have.
Well, but that's like saying the cat and the lion are not the same kind because they have different powered biting force.
Biochemistry is radically different. 80% of our proteins are not found in any ape.
Yeah, did you read the whole paper, Neph?
Yeah, it says 80% of human proteins in ape proteins vary by at least one amino acid, often more.
Right. So right. What I talked about with Kent was one amino acid difference could constitute zero difference in the protein whatsoever.
Not by a mutation. That would
yes.
reduce deficiency or
nope.
unless.
No. I'm not going to let you lie about it.
Let me respond. No. So when it comes to mutations in proteins, there's only one way that
biochemistry.
Taylor.
Are you a biochemist?
Get a grip. So Taylor, the only way that a mutation, a substitution, amino acid substitution will not affect a protein folding and diminish or eliminate its function is if a particular amino acid gets substituted for one that just happens to provide exactly the same fold, and that's very rare.
No, that's wrong.
So, no, that's exactly science.
No, it's not.
Oh, no, Taylor, you're in denial of nonsense of scientific evidence in biology, Taylor.
No, do you know what genetic degeneracy is?
Taylor, if you want to discuss protein evolution, I'll do that.
If you want to discuss the subject of my degree, we can do that now. But you can't just sit here and tell me no and then talk over me when I'm giving you the answer. I'm correcting you right now.
Taylor, thousands of biologists with PhDs way over your head agree with me.
No, they don't.
It is rare that a mutation substitutes an amino acid in a protein code, happens to be the one that will provide the same fold. The overwhelming majority of time.
Do you know what I know what those odds are. Do you know what they are? You know
They're
what
very slim.
No, it's about 25%.
And that's
Or base code.
even that would be too great. So,
No.
but Taylor, I want to address your insect claim. Now, when
No.
wait a minute. You made a claim. I want to go back to it.
You made the claim, and I'm correcting you.
So you provided your. You think is okay, Taylor. You have to go off. Get a grip, man. Come on.
No.
Taylor, don't.
You made a claim about my degree, and I'm going to correct you right now. And I'm not moving on until we do. Period.
Taylor,
I will stonewall you all day long or hang up. I am not moving on.
Well, hang up.
Okay, do you know what codon degeneracy is?
You provided your supposed rebuttal, that is that 25%
no, I haven't.
of the time.
No,
you just say it'll happen.
Because you know I'm going to correct you.
No. I want to address your insect claim.
No, I'm going to address your claim.
You already did. You said 25%.
Nope. That was not my address.
That's what you said, 25%.
No. Do you know what codon degeneracy is?
What about it? I don't play the test games, you know.
I'm just seeing if you know.
Make a point.
So I need to explain.
No, you don't need to test me. Make a point. Evolutionists always want to test you. Do you know what a thing? Just answer. Make a point.
Right. So you don't know. You do not know. I'm going to rub that in your face right now. You don't know. So I'm going to explain it. Since you had to do your spiel, now I'm really going to rub it in your face.
Just make a point.
You have no idea what you're talking about. So codon degeneracy, I'm going to have to explain it because you don't know what you're talking about, is the fact that multiple amino acid, or that one amino acid can be coded for by multiple different codons. So you can get a change in the codon and no change in amino acid. So what you said is absolutely incorrect.
No, it's not incorrect. I said it can happen. I said it's rare.
No, you said something else was rare.
No, I said it's rare. Now, you said, when is it that you say that they found all these fossils that show the evolution, that clearly show this? They've got lots of steps, you implied, that show the evolution of winged insects from non-winged insects. When did they discover these fossils, Taylor?
I don't know. I don't memorize all the dates.
Well, you said 1997. They have to be in later than that because my source is so outdated.
Yeah,
right?
probably.
Probably. You don't really know. I'm wrong, but
I can look it up, but you just asked me for a specific date on a specific thing. I don't go and memorize these things. It's
you don't know when they found all these?
No, I didn't memorize the dates.
Oh, but you know that I'm wrong when I say the insect.
Because I did memorize those because I have to for my classes that I have to pass.
Oh, so you know that 1997 is too early, right? But you don't know when they were found, right? Well, okay, so that's kind of funny. But let me show you. Here's a science paper from 2015, which states, unfortunately, there is a lengthy gap between hexapod record and spanning a 65 million year window from 385 to 325 million years ago. Prior to the hexapod gap, we know that insects had already diversified sufficiently to give rise to, insect with wings, etc. They said and they speak about the hexapod gap, and they say the evolution of insects with wings had to have taken place in that gap. So it's a gap. It's not illustrated by numerous transitional forms as you claimed. That's published in 2015. So this paper states from 2015 that the evolution of winged insects takes place in a gap in which shows no transitional forms between non-winged insects and winged insects. No. In other words, they don't have any fossil evidence that shows it.
No, there are transitions. It's just there's a gap.
Well, no, it had to have taken place in that gap. The gap.
We see insects with little wings.
The gap in the fossil record.
Right. We see insects with little wings.
But this
medium-sized wings, and then we see them with fully formed wings.
So this source says that you're wrong. You see?
No, that's completely.
Yeah, it does. I know you say it does.
There's a gap between medium wings and fully formed wings.
Yeah,
that's what I just said.
No, the gap between insects with wings and without wings is huge.
We found them with small wings.
It's millions of years, and so no. If you find an insect with wings, you got wings. There's no evolution to wings. You said there was
Yes,
lots.
there is, because we see them with their little gill
But you can't
spots,
tell
and
me
they
what
get
they
bigger
are
and bigger
or
and
when they
bigger,
evolved.
and then all of a sudden they're wings. I wonder what happened.
All of a sudden they're wings.
So the
Right.
exact same insect has bigger and bigger gill spots, and then all of a sudden the exact same
So
insect with the same body plan, now
gill
it's got wings.
spots, suddenly they're wings, and you say that's transitional. That shows that.
Yep, because we have little ones,
Things.
slightly bigger ones, medium ones, and then really big ones.
And then wings. Right. So those are not wings, though. But then they have wings.
It is. So if you see a little tiny nub of a hand growing, and then a medium nub, and then you see a fully formed arm, you're going to say, oh, well, there's no connection between them.
Okay, so there's an appendage, but that's not a wing. Sorry.
Yeah, so no one cares about the gaps. That's not how we test our
what you said is false. They don't have transitional forms to show.
Yeah, they do. It's just not
winged
as complete as you would like. It has some gaps.
No, by your own admission, they have a creature that has an appendage, but is not a wing. And then they have creatures with wings.
In the same spot, with the same structures. I wonder.
What you claim is that the wing came into being from a different type of anatomical feature, and that's just your claim. So it doesn't show
same type of anatomical feature.
No, it's not a wing.
Yeah, it's in the same spot. It's has the same tissues in it.
In a similar location in the body plan doesn't mean then it a wing. And it doesn't make it a transitional form to wings.
Fine.
Taylor, what you're doing is what all
is a cosmetic change.
You're telling us that the imaginary changes that take place in your imagination are fossils, and they're not.
No, you're trying to distract away from the methodology.
No, we don't have the forms. We have an insect that has an appendage also in a similar location in the body plan, and it's not a wing.
And then that same kind of organism has bigger wings. So.
And then we have wings. No, not bigger wings, not bigger wings. Wings, no wings to wings. That's what we have.
So we have these membranous things that are on insect's shoulders that are where wings are.
Okay, so they have a membrane. They have a membrane. What they have is actually a protrusion of their exoskeleton, right? And that's not a wing. No. That's not a wing, Taylor. So there's no fossil
protrusion of their exoskeleton.
There isn't any abundant evidence forms showing clearly the one evolution of wings, as you said. You grotesquely misrepresented the scientific data on that, as evolutionists always do.
Nope, we have arthropod-like insects with the same number of legs as arthropods, with the same basic body plan as basically like a springtail or a silverfish.
And they have no wings.
With less legs. Yeah, and right where their gill spots are on their back and down their sides, the ones down their sides get smaller and the ones on their back get bigger.
And they have
then
skeleton.
Then we see the gap where the insects explode and all of them have wings.
Right, so then you see insects with wings. And you're pointing
to a slow transition. Right. So there's a small gap.
Evolution. You're pointing to an insect that has a protrusion on its exoskeleton on its back that is not like a wing. It does not operate like a wing. It is not a wing. It's not appendage attached to muscles and nerves that operates, that moves, it has biomechanical function. It doesn't. Okay. And then we have insects with wings. So all of the transition takes place in your imagination, and you're telling people that's science. That's scientific evidence that clearly shows the evolution of wings from non-wings, and that is a woeful, disingenuous way to treat science. Shame on you, Taylor.
No, we come up with an explanation in our imagination, and then we go and test that, and then, since our tests have been successful, then we call it science. You can't even get to the testing phase.
Well, you don't have what you claimed. You misrepresented science. We all see that.
No, we made the prediction, and we found exactly what we were looking for. Exactly
you have a range.
So the model
of its exoskeleton, it's not an appendage, and it's not a wing. And then we have insects with wings. There is no clear transition. No, it's not an appendage. It's an outgrowth of its exoskeleton.
No, it's not.
It's not attached to muscles and nerves and operates like a limb. That's not true.
How do you know that?
I've seen the fossils.
No, you clearly haven't if you think it's part of the exoskeleton. Gill tissue is not exoskeleton. Do you realize this?
Okay,
Right.
so this is what evolutionists hypothesize, that the exoskeleton expanded. No, you're talking about a different example. Gill tissues are not wings either.
Yeah, but they became wing-like.
You know, there's several theories about how evolution of wings took place for insects. You're talking about a separate one. I was speaking of a different one, but now you're talking about a different one. And gill tissue is not a wing. It's not even related to the same animal, the function. Gills are not related to locomotion.
So if you stretch it out, what does it become?
Gills are not related to locomotion.
Right. So if you stretch out a tissue, it creates a thin membrane.
It's already a membrane. It's not a wing.
So you just change the shape of it. That's it.
No, you have to change a lot of more things than that. You got to give it the muscles. You got to give it the tendons. It has to be.
Not really. They breathe through their skin.
It has to be in a different location on the body plan.
No, it's already there.
And it has to have it has to have a firm membrane, not a soft tissue membrane.
So soft tissue can't get.
And it has to be a different
micro changes.
And also to believe that something related to respiration somehow transitioned to something related to locomotion is the most bizarre sort of belief. That's kind of almost as bad as
it changes shape, it changes function.
The evolutionist whale thing, you know, with the ischium and the which attached to the corpora cavernosa of the whale's reproductive organs somehow were related to locomotion when they're actually part of reproduction. So it's just another crazy idea of evolutionists, that something that has the function of one biological feature function somehow becomes changed, co-opted to something completely different, from respiration to locomotion. That's a pretty bizarre belief system.
And that's a belief you hold. You believe in cosmetic changes and something changing shape or changing size or firmness is something you believe.
No, I don't believe in anatomical change. You evolutionists do, and I certainly never believe that a feature that's related to respiration could
possibly cosmetic change
any amount of time ever be co-opted for locomotion. That would.
Did I say anatomical? Did I say anatomical? What did I say?
Anatomical.
What did I say?
I didn't say you said anatomical.
What did I say?
So that's just an absolutely bizarre belief.
What did I say? I said cosmetic.
I don't believe cosmetic changes are capable of producing anatomical ones. You might believe that.
You do.
I don't believe that.
Yeah, you do. What is a bigger tooth? So a seal, if it gets two big teeth, it's not a walrus. Is that not an anatomical change? Or a walrus is seals?
It's already a tooth, right?
Right, that's what I'm saying. So gill tissue is already tissue. You change the shape of it, and it does something different.
Oh, it becomes a different anatomical feature. No, they're completely different anatomical features. One is for respiration, the other is locomotion.
It doesn't matter. The gill doesn't know what it's doing. It just does what it does because there's chemicals next to it. So
I'm just pointing out the absurdity of believing that such a thing can happen.
No, you believe it. If it changes shape,
no, I don't believe
cosmetic change.
No, I don't believe that at all. That's not
one feature. You don't change its composition. You just change.
That's not cosmetic. That's anatomical. That's anatomy, not.
Well, it's all the same genes.
No, now you're claiming that they can know that the same genes that produce the gill tissues in an insect, a pre-winged insect,
get a different shaped hand. Neph.
Wow, what's the genetic evidence of that again?
So you don't think people with like different shaped with 6 fingers, you don't think that that's connected to genetics?
That doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about.
Yes, it does. It's anatomical.
A duplication of an existing feature, not the arisal
what if my hand was
a new anatomical feature. That's not the same thing at all. It's a goalpost.
What if I was born with my hand stiff like a paddle?
Well, then you'd have a deformity.
Is that an anatomical change?
You'd be weeded out by natural selection.
Is that an anatomical change?
You can't use any. You can't use.
Is that an anatomical change?
It is, but it's not the kind that supports evolution.
Yes, it is.
No,
Because
it's
that's
a
exactly
human
what
being
happened
born with
to
that kind of deformity would be.
the whales. They had hands. They got
Taylor,
stiff and paddle like you just
Taylor, do
admitted
you
that's
understand
possible.
that? Taylor, do you understand that a human being born with that kind of deformity, and if it became fixed in the genome, and thereafter all the children, offspring of that human being had that kind of deformity, that natural selection weeds them out, right?
That's why it's not a deformity in the water.
Right.
Yeah, now I can swim better
Same
than other
thing.
people.
Well, that's your imagination, but we just don't have the form.
No, that's what happened to whales and penguins.
We don't have
their wings became like paddles, and all of a sudden, guess what? They can swim better.
We don't have the transitional forms for either whales or penguins.
Yeah, we do.
Show me.
I've showed you these before.
We've been over that. Rhodocedus was a fraud.
Myocetus has the same skeleton as Durodon, except you just admitted that a shrinking anatomical feature, that's not an anatomical change, and a more paddle-like hands, that's not an anatomical change. So you just contradicted your previous debates with me, and you just proved whale evolution.
You know that it's shrunk? No, what we have is Basilosaurus that has
no, Myocetus and Durodon.
And they have two small anterior fins, and then we go to whales that have neither, and don't even have the bones for a fin. So that's not transitional forms. That's
you just said that your hand forming a flat paddle because of a birth defect.
Yes.
Is not an anatomical difference.
No, I said
there's no anatomical difference between any steps in whale evolution. You just said it.
No, there isn't any. No, we go from Basilosaurus
They're all the same kind.
to whales that don't have them. We go from creatures that have fins to creatures that have none of the bones for a fin. That's not showing anatomical change. That's leaping from one type of organism to another.
No, it's the same organism. You just said it's not an anatomical change. It's you got a hand that goes flat.
No, the changes take place in your imagination. We don't have it in the fossils. We have a creature that has anterior fins, and then we have whales. Nothing.
No, we can test that imaginary model.
We have nothing.
You don't want to go there, then.
Well, just show us the ones between Basilosaurus and whales, and we're good.
It doesn't seem like you can follow anything I've said.
No, I don't believe imaginative stories or evolution. No. I don't believe that because you can look at a creature.
I'm trying to establish a premise and a conclusion. That's it.
Taylor, what you're pointing
to. I can write them down and put them on the screen for you.
Taylor, what you're pointing to is a creature that has small anterior fins with all the bones. And then you're pointing
all the bones of a creature with a foot.
And then you're pointing to whales that have none of those bones.
No. What happened to their hip bones?
Huh? If you want to show the transition from the creature with fins to the whale that has none and no bones for fins in its anatomy, you've got to show the forms in between. But they don't exist.
Yeah, I did. I showed you 5 of them.
No, there are none, Taylor. Taylor, are you denying that the creatures that they go from fins to no fins at all in the whale? Are you denying that? You need to share the pictures to show the evolutionist.
Are you denying that it has bones?
So what we have, I'll say it one last time. I'm not going to repeat myself for ridiculous reasons. We go from a creature that has small fins to a creature that has no bones in that location of its body plan. None.
Why?
It's not transition. That's what happens.
A hip bone and leg bones.
That happens in your imagination, Taylor. That's not fossil evidence. Okay. Leaping from one type of leg bones. Leaping from one anatomy to another anatomy doesn't show evolution, Taylor.
Or not. It's the same anatomy by your standards.
No, it's not the same anatomy.
Oh, yes, it is, and you admitted it.
So, wait, you're saying
if my arm became stiff,
now you're saying
and solid like a paddle, that is not an anatomical difference.
Taylor,
that's what's happening in whale evolution.
Are you saying that a creature that has anterior fins and one that has no bones for fins whatsoever, they have the same anatomy?
What are you assuming has anterior fins?
A Basilosaurus has them. Whales have none.
So?
Okay, so that's not the same anatomy, right?
Yeah, it is.
It is?
Yes, because we can look inside them. Guess what? It's got the bones.
So fins are not anatomical? That's the same anatomy. You're saying a creature that has anterior fins and one that has none, that's the same anatomy?
That's what you say.
Is that what you're saying? It's the same anatomy?
Can I finish? You say that
if same anatomy,
something being larger or smaller is just a is not a difference in anatomy.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get at
we look inside them. They have the leg bones for those fins, but their fins are so small. And we actually see dolphins being born sometimes with those 4 fins.
No, whales do not have any of those bones, Taylor. They have
yes, they do. They have a pelvis and hind limbs.
No, whales do not have a pelvis. Whales have 2 bones called ischium, and they attach to the corporal cavernosa of the penis, and they're part of their anchors, and they're held in place by cartilage, and they're for the reproductive system of the whale to anchor its reproductive organ. They exist in the female also for the base as a support for the female reproductive organ. There are no other bones. They don't have a pelvis. They don't have a femurs, tibula, wrist bones, digits. They have none of that. That is a difference in anatomy, is it not? You can acknowledge the fins, where no bones for fins. That's a very great difference in anatomy, is it not?
An ischium is a hip bone.
Is that not a great difference in anatomy, Taylor?
No, not according to everything I understand about your
Okay,
anatomy.
thank you.
You just say something bigger or smaller is not a change of anatomy. So I'm going by your standard.
Great. So he says it's not a difference in anatomy. Wow.
Yes. Yeah, a smaller or bigger, that's not a difference in anatomy, according to you.
But Taylor, small fins to no bones for fins is not smaller. That's none.
It does have bones.
Whales don't have any bones for fins.
Yeah, they do.
No, they don't. They have ischium.
Yes, they do. They have them on their front, and then they have really small ones in the back.
No, they have 2 ischium. They have no bones for fins. None of those bones. None of the bones. There's two bones.
Yes, some of them do.
Taylor, they have 2 bones only, and they're related to reproduction, not locomotion.
Some of them also have leg bones.
No, whales don't have leg bones.
Yes, they do.
No, whales don't have leg bones.
Yeah, they do.
No, whales don't. Wow, he says whales have leg bones.
Yeah, they do. Baleen whales do. Blue whales.
No, they're reproductive. They're reproductive bones, Taylor.
No, they're not.
They attach to reproductive features.
Because guess what? We have a fossil from before, and it's exactly the same baleen whale. It's just their leg bones are a little bit bigger.
No, they don't have leg bones, Taylor. They have
ischium. Which is a hip bone, and they have leg bones and ischium. I'm looking at it right now.
They're part of the reproductive system. They're not part of locomotion, Taylor.
No, they're not. What other animal needs a bone to reproduce?
They're not.
What kind of god do you have that can't produce a whale that has the same anatomical features as every other creature in the ocean that can reproduce without bones?
Is this kind of like your idea about insects with wings?
So you can imagine it all day long, but you can't even test your idea. We can test ours, but you don't even want to talk about that.
It fails to test. We go from a creature that has no bones for fins to one that has fins. That's not a transition.
That's not the test.
That's not clear evidence of transition. That's jumping from one anatomy to another.
That's not how we test it.
That's what the fossil record tells us.
Not really.
Jump from one anatomy to another. That's not evidence of transition.
The fossil record itself doesn't say anything.
You need a series of bones that show, so we can see it happen.
We come up with
2
hypotheses. These are possible explanations. You have one hypothesis.
Imaginative stories you call hypotheses are not scientific unless they're backed up.
Hypotheses are just hypotheses. So you can't even tell me one way to test yours. We've tested ours thousands of times.
It fails to test.
What test?
Of evolution. There's no the bones.
The test of evolution?
The bones are not present.
What's the test of evolution?
Well, the fossil record is one test of evolution, and it fails.
Does evolution say that we're gonna find every single fossil that we're looking for? Is that part of the theory of evolution? No, it's not.
Okay,
so how do we test the theory of evolution? How can we test any proposition?
Okay, so let's do this again one more time.
Can you answer my question?
We have creatures here have complete legs. Okay, Rhodocetus has legs, and it was also fraudulently reproduction. The reconstruction of it was fraudulent, but it has legs. It's got all the bones. Then we have Durodon, which has 2 small anterior fins. Okay. Then we get to whales. They have none. They have two bones called ischium, and they're anchors for the reproductive organ in the whale. Durodon is not a whale. It's an aquatic creature, not technically a whale. It's an extinct species of some kind of animal, for sure, but it has the bones for a small fin. Whales have none. Okay, so that's not that the transition.
No, I'm looking at it right there.
Occurs in your mind,
Nope,
not in the fossils.
Nope, you're wrong. We see
I
it
just showed you.
perfectly. You see the transition perfectly, and you're excluding a lot. So I'm comparing Myocetus and Durodon.
Same
And,
evidence. It's the same evidence. Creatures with fins to
So are baleen whales not whales, or are dolphins not whales?
Dolphins are not whales.
Oh my God. So are orcas dolphins? How are you determining this, by the way? Right, you don't know. How are you determining this?
They don't show evidence of evolution, though.
No, it's just whatever you feel like. Put that to the test. You can't.
No, it's just the transition isn't there, Taylor.
No, how do you define whale? How do you decide what's a whale and what's not?
I know it happens in your imagination, but it's just not
Answer my question.
Physical.
Answer my question.
Well, I've already just.
How do you determine what is and what is not mankind? Well, I know how you do it.
I don't know. Same way you do a species.
I want to know if you're self-aware enough.
Same way you would a species, I guess. It can be tricky.
How?
Well, it's difficult. You have to compare anatomy and physiology and homology.
Right.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's how evolution.
It's called the species problem. But the point is, we go from creatures which have fins to creatures which have no fins. That's not evolution. That's just leaping from one anatomy to another. And that's not evidence. That doesn't show anybody evolution happened except anywhere except in your head. That's what they show.
They've got the same.
Okay, I'm done with
the same bones as the angular fetus.
I refuted your insect thing, and now I've refuted for the third time, I think, the whale thing. I'm going to mute myself.
You just proved me right at every step. So you just told me that we figure a relation out with comparative anatomy. So we're comparing their anatomy. You also told me that if I was born with a birth defect, that my arms were straight and paddle-like, that would not be a change in anatomy. So I said
it would be, and it would be a deformity, and natural selection would weed that out because and so it can't be used for evolution. Things that are detrimental to the point that the organism goes extinct can't be support for evolution. You understand?
So I have the same bones in my arms. It's just the tissues are restricting
that doesn't support your imagination.
No, is that an anatomical change?
Show me one that's not detrimental.
That's an actual disease.
Evolution claims these things are not detrimental. What happens? You're pointing to something that's detrimental to the species and claiming that's sort of evolution. Yeah. That's ridiculous, Taylor.
I've got all the same bones.
That's a mistake. That's your final mistake for the time being. I'm going to mute myself a while.
Yeah, because you can't handle it. If I have thicker cartilage at my joints, same bones and everything, that's not an anatomical change.
Does evolution proceed by?
Oh, okay, you're still here. Do we observe?
Does evolution proceed by changes that are beneficial or detrimental?
Both.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Detrimental?
Right, and then there's these things called compensatory mutations.
So creatures which are unfit.
They correct bad mutations.
So evolution proceeds by changes that make the organism unfit for survival. That's evolution.
Usually, when you transition between two kinds, we see an evolution. Can I finish? We see an evolutionary dip in individual fitness. No, I didn't. We see a dip in individual fitness, and then we see compensatory mutations, and then we see a higher fitness on the other side.
So Taylor's using deformed hands, which make a human being unfit for survival.
Deformed in one environment, not deformed in another.
That's how deep his imagination goes, the deep state there.
Right. A penguin can't survive in the desert. It does well in the water.
Well.
Yeah, so does anyone want to talk about how we actually confirm models?
think they all got bored with your storyboards.
It's not a storyboard. That's what you don't get. Is we confirm the model. That's how we know the storyboard is accurate. Just like a map. You could look at this map and just be like, oh, that's just, look at those. It's just pretty colors printed out from a computer, just lines on a piece of paper. Guess what? If the map accurately represents reality, it doesn't matter if it's just a cartoon on a piece of paper. The model is accurate enough to use it.
Not when you don't have the bones to show it. There ain't no accuracy to it.
So that's
not
why
when you have to point to a.
Say we're going to find every single fossil.
And not when you point to a deformity in a human being that would make them unfit for survival and claim that's evidence of evolution.
So you think if there's one gap, that fossilifies the whole thing?
Wow.
Do you think that the theory of evolution says we need to find every fossil with 0 gaps? Do you think that that's how science proceeds? That
No,
we go from 0% knowledge to 100%.
We should have clear evidence of transition. If evolution were true, it would have left countless millions of transition
gradual transition.
And
we
would
predictions about countless, come true.
And we would see countless examples of transition in extant species too. And we don't have either one.
This is the game you play. You go 1 transition, we show you 2. You go 3 transitions.
You don't show any, though. That's the thing. Taylor, I'm just going to tell you straight up. You cling to this philosophy of evolution desperately because you refuse to believe in God. That's why you support it, because you don't want to believe in God. And you think that evolution provides you a scientific way out, but it doesn't, I'm afraid.
That's just a straight up lie.
It doesn't. No, Taylor, that's exactly what's going on with you and millions of other evolution.
Are you psychic? Can you read my mind? Because you're doing a terrible job at it.
I know well, because I've debated them so many times that.
Well, guess what? I'm not them.
I've had all them explain to me their storyboards in their imagination, and they argue for it. And
so guess what? I want you to be right.
If you were intellectually honest about the evidence, you would acknowledge that the transition from creatures which have limbs, fins, to no fins is true, and that we don't have fossil evidence of that change. But you won't admit that. You'll say that itself, the creature with fins and the fact that we have one that has no fins, is the evidence that the transition took place. And that's being disingenuous. No. That's completely dishonest about the evidence.
Yeah, you're being completely dishonest.
And so when evolutionists do this, they prove to me.
Why are you going on with your lie?
They prove to me that they wholeheartedly to the philosophy of evolution because they think it gives them a scientific excuse for denying God.
No.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, there's plenty of people who deny God who don't believe in evolution, and it has nothing to do with that question.
They have a different.
There are plenty of Christians who don't believe in God.
There's something to do, and they have a
record is not our evidence.
They have a different problem than people like yourself.
No, so you also lie.
They hold evolution theory for a different reason.
As the evidence that transition happened.
Those people hold the evolution as true for a different reason. It's a theological one. It's a different type of theological.
No, it's a scientific.
It's a different theological one, and the reason
we did the science and school thing.
Well, I'll tell you why Christians who believe evolution, after having had the evidence that refutes it presented to them, and still go on fighting for evolution theory. The reason those people do it is because they don't want to believe in the personalness of the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus
Bullshit.
Christ. They want to believe that they're a product of some, goofy little creatures that squiggled up and God made evolution and he went about fighting.
Okay, you can play at that game.
Playing chess with 30 billion people at one time. All the while human beings were evolving and he just didn't give a crap about what was
going on. You just want to tell everyone else that they're stupid, you're the smartest of all time, and that you'll lead them.
And Taylor, the reason they do that is because
you don't actually believe in God. You just want attention. Having a special anti-science position. I can play this game
too.
So
the reason that they hold to evolution theory is because they don't want to believe they were specially created in the image of God. Because that makes Jesus Christ, who is a man, God in the flesh of man, who paid the price in his flesh for their flesh.
You are the kind of person that makes us
way too personal for them to deal with. And so they hold the evolution theory, which they think separates them.
You know, you should stop lying.
Of
you should
Jesus
really
Christ
stop
and his
lying. I went
crucifixion. And so that's why Christians who
doesn't like liars.
fight for evolution do it. There's a very different reason for why you do it.
You're the biggest liar I've ever talked to, dude. I went to Catholic school. They taught evolution and they believed in a personal God. You are full of shit.
No, that doesn't mean anything to me. I'm still right.
No, you're full of shit. You're a liar.
No,
you're lying about Christians.
You're very upset about it right now, and that's
right because you're talking about people that I know.
Yeah, because that's telling too. I think you're
calling
I hit the head on the nail. I hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what it is.
No, they all tried to convince me of a personal God. So you're just wrong.
No, I'm not. I'm absolutely wrong.
You are absolutely wrong.
No, you hold to evolution theory because you refuse to believe in God. That's the only reason.
You are lying about the people I know.
That's the only reason you fight for it. And the reason they fight for it, if they do, is because they don't want to believe the personalness of the
No, it's because they think that's the scientific consensus.
Not after they've been shown the evidence that refutes it.
Oh, okay.
Once that happens and they still fight for evolution,
and it must be denial.
Then we know why.
No, it's that they actually believe in the evidence.
No, it's because the evidence is too clear. And if they see the evidence that refutes evolution theory, they're compelled to not believe it anymore. And if they believe in it, they hold to it and fight for it, then they're doing it not for science, but
I can play that too. Once I've shown you the evidence, you know I'm right. You know I'm right now. If you're just in denial. See, I can play that too. So shut up. Your dirty little games are not going to work here.
No, that's no game. I just told you the facts.
It is a game. So I'm gonna play your game. You know I'm right. You're just in denial because you want to be special. So
that would be a delusion if you believe that. That would be a delusion.
Okay, guys, it's let's see here. You know what? We've gone past what we said we were gonna do. Hopefully, we'll do a round 2 in the next couple days. It's been fun. Matt,
I want to talk to someone else who doesn't just interrupt me the whole time.
Yeah, we'll have a round 2 in the next, hopefully, couple days. It's been fun, guys. Listen, Neph, Matt, Taylor, everyone have a good night. Hope the audience enjoyed. We'll talk to you later.
All right, later.
All right, bye.